Imagine convincing 15 million people to spit into a tube, mail it to you, and pay $200 for the privilege. Not just their saliva, their DNA, their ancestry, their genetic disease risks, the biological blueprint of their entire family tree. Parents, siblings, children, cousins they haven't met yet. Now imagine going bankrupt and putting all of that data on the auction block to the highest bidder. That's not a dystopian Netflix series. That's 23andMe, the company that turned your genetic identity into a product, then couldn't figure out how to make money selling it. By the end of this story, 15 million people's DNA will be owned by a non-profit, run by the same CEO who drove the company into the ground. Because apparently, when you fail at capitalism, you just relabel it as charity. I'm the business historian. Let's get into it. Our story begins in 2006, when Ann Wojcicki co-founded 23andMe with a simple pitch. Spit in a tube and we'll tell you where your ancestors came from. Oh, and whether you're likely to get Alzheimer's. The product was genius. For about $200, you got a report telling you things like you're 42% Irish, you have a slightly elevated risk for celiac disease, and you can taste bitter things more than most people. Groundbreaking stuff. But Wojcicki had bigger ambitions than telling people they're part Scandinavian. She wanted to build the world's largest genetic database. Because here's the thing about DNA data. It's not just interesting to you, it's incredibly valuable to pharmaceutical companies, researchers, and anyone trying to develop new drugs. And here's the twist that made 23andMe brilliant and slightly terrifying. Customers weren't just buying a product, they were the product. Every spit kit was another data point in a massive genetic library that 23andMe could license to drug companies. It worked. By 2018, 23andMe had signed a $300 million deal with GlaxoSmithKline to use the genetic data for drug development. 15 million people had paid to hand over their DNA, and now a pharmaceutical giant was paying 23andMe to access it. In 2021, 23andMe went public through a merger with a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company, backed by Richard Branson. Their valuation? $6 billion. $6 billion. For a company that convinced people to pay for the privilege of being a data point. But here's the problem nobody wanted to talk about. 23andMe had a one-time purchase problem. You only spit in a tube once. There's no reason to buy a second kit. Your DNA doesn't change. And that, as it turns out, is a very bad business model. After going public at $6 billion, 23andMe's problems started piling up. And they were spectacular. Problem number one. The DNA gold rush was over. By 2022, everyone who was curious about their ancestry had already bought a kit. The market was saturated. Revenue was falling. And without new customers, the database wasn't growing, which meant pharma companies were less interested in paying for access. Problem number two. They tried to become a drug company, a DNA testing company, trying to develop actual drugs. Wojcicki decided 23andMe should use its genetic data to develop its own pharmaceuticals. This is like a company that makes thermometers deciding to start curing cancer. They burned through hundreds of millions of dollars on drug development programs that produced nothing approved, nothing profitable, just cash incineration. Problem number three. They got hacked badly. In October 2023, 23andMe announced that hackers had stolen the personal data of 6.4 million customers. Names, ancestry information, health predispositions. The most intimate data imaginable, now floating around the dark web. The hack wasn't just embarrassing, it was existential, because 23andMe's entire value proposition was trust us with your DNA, and now they'd proven that trust was misplaced. Customers started deleting their accounts, lawsuits piled up, revenue collapsed further. And then came the part that turned the corporate failure into something genuinely unsettling. On March 23, 2025, 23andMe filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. CEO Ann Wojcicki resigned. But this wasn't a normal bankruptcy. When a restaurant goes bankrupt, they sell the tables and chairs. When a tech company goes bankrupt, they sell the patents and servers. When 23andMe goes bankrupt, they sell your DNA. 15 million people's genetic data, their disease risks, their ancestry, their biological identity, was now an asset on a bankruptcy court's balance sheet, up for sale to whoever bid the most. State attorneys general across the country panicked. They filed objections, arguing that selling genetic data in a bankruptcy auction violated their citizens' privacy rights. The Missouri Attorney General appointed an independent privacy ombudsman to review the sale. The Federal Trade Commission wrote to the bankruptcy court warning that any sale had to respect the privacy promises 23andMe had made to its customers. And who stepped up as the buyer? This is where it gets truly absurd. The winning bid came from TTAM Research Institute, a non-profit founded by Anne Wojcicki, the same CEO who just resigned, the same person who ran the company into the ground. She bought back the DNA database for $305 million through her own non-profit. Same business, same employees, same privacy policies, same data, just without the $6 billion in debt. The bankruptcy judge approved it, ruling that because the equity structure changed but the privacy policy stayed the same, it technically wasn't a transfer of data requiring new customer consent. Members of Congress called it what it was, a loophole. Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group, told Congress that Wojcicki had used bankruptcy to launder reputations and reacquire sensitive assets under the guise of non-profit stewardship. 15 million people paid to give away their DNA. The company lost it in a hack. Then it went bankrupt, and the founder bought it all back at a 95% discount through a non-profit she created. They paid to give it away, and they can't ever get it back. So what do we learn from 23andMe's $6 billion collapse? Lesson 1. When the product is free, you are the product. When 23andMe's customers sent in their DNA, they weren't buying a service. They were supplying raw material. The genetic database was always the real business. The ancestry reports were just the wrapper. Lesson 2. One-time purchases aren't a business model. Your DNA doesn't change. There's no subscription, no repeat purchase, no reason to come back. 23andMe had 50 million customers and no way to sell them anything twice. That's a yard sale, not a company. Lesson 3. Bankruptcy courts weren't built for the age of data. The bankruptcy code was written for factories, inventory, and real estate, not the genetic blueprints of 15 million human beings. When DNA becomes a line item on a balance sheet, the law isn't equipped to protect the people it belongs to. Here's the part that should keep you up at night. 23andMe's privacy policy now says TTAM will honor all previous commitments. But TTAM is a non-profit with no regulatory obligation to keep those promises long-term. If TTAM runs out of money or gets acquired or simply changes its mind, your DNA goes back on the auction block. And here's the kicker. Wojcicki's non-profit, TTAM, uses the same initials as 23andMe, just rearranged. The bankruptcy judge himself noted it's the same business, the same employees, familiar leaders, and the same privacy policies. She didn't save the company, she just changed its name and dropped the debt. 15 million people paid $200 to give a company their most private biological information. That company got hacked, went bankrupt, and the CEO bought their DNA back at a 95% discount through a non-profit she created the week before. They paid to give it away, and she got paid to take it back. If you enjoyed this deep dive into corporate disasters, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more stories of companies that fooled the world until they didn't. I'm the business historian. Thanks for watching.